Today would be a good day to go out and do a late season crop tour. That gives us an average yield of 176 bushels per acre. Y'all want some poor ground, 156 bushels, possibly 176 bushels an acre. I'll take that all day long. Some really stout bottom ground. They're all each 16 rows around. This one's 47 kernels long. This one's 45 kernels long, and this one's 35 kernels long. 1,000 kernels per bushel. 252 bushels per acre. Now this right here is some phytogen cotton, and it looks really great if it was 3 weeks ago. We still got 7 nodes above white flower that have got squares that most likely not going to make anything. All right, here we are out here in the field. If you remember from our last wheat harvest video, this is the one that I rode through judging how much we were gonna have to replant. And there's the beans that we replanted. Basically, we replanted the whole center part of the field, about 30 acres. We got about 25 acres of cotton that we left. You know, some of it is test plots, which is what we're looking at now. As you can tell, these beans look phenomenal. I'm so glad I replanted the cotton. And in fact, I wish I'd replanted more cotton into beans, because these beans got a great stand. Just starting to bloom. These were actually the very last beans that we planted, and they look phenomenal right now. Now looking here at the cotton, well, you know, it looked a whole lot worse a month ago. Right now it still doesn't look good, but it's a very, very thin stand right here. Well, basically we kept this because I wasn't going to terminate the UT variety trials. You know, the data is really important, but you can tell we got a very skippy stand. But you know, cotton has an amazing ability to compensate for a low stand, but it takes time and it takes heat units. 2 things we're not going to have this year. You can tell this right here is one plant, and you can see how much it's branched out, and you know, looks really good. You know, if this was a month ago, you know, we could still stand to make pretty good yield off of it, but we just run out of time. See, here's a white bloom, but all this up here in the top, just not going to have enough time to make it. You know, this is this cotton really compensating. See here, we got one of the lower branches. We got our first position bowl. We got our second position, third position, fourth position. So it's got the ability to compensate if it's got time to fill it all out, but it's not going to. This cotton is so far behind. This is Delta Pine 1646. The Delta Pine varieties just didn't show the vigor that they needed to come out of that cold spell like we wanted to. And to top it all off, Delta Pine 1646 is more of a mid-season maturing variety, whereas all the rest of our stuff is early maturing varieties, which is just going to compound the problem. So I just really don't expect much from this cotton this year. I wish I just replanted this whole blasted field. And something else that we saw, this has been an above average year as far as insects problems go. So we've sprayed at least one more time than we normally do, and even still with all that spraying, we did a good job of killing what was out there when we did. A couple times by the time the scouted it and told us we needed chemicals, and I think one time we got rained out for a day or so, we weren't able to get in the spray, and we saw some problems with some fruit getting knocked off. So here's one fruiting branch right here. You can kind of see a little bit of a scar right there. That's where a square got hit by most likely plant bugs and got damaged, and the plant aborted it. And where the second position would be also did that. So sometimes we got whole nodes up here that the first and second position bowls got knocked off. Here's another one. where it got knocked off. So right here on the last effective bloom date, the plant's gotten up to that point to where it should be blooming, but because there's no squares because of insect damage, it's it doesn't have anything to bloom at this time. So that's just going to be another ding on yield, and this is something I've seen over most all of my fields. About midway up the plant, we're missing a lot of first position bolls on the two limbs that they just happen to get hit by insects at the wrong time, and we just weren't able to spray for them in time. So where we could have another couple days of blooming, we're not going to have that because the squares aren't there to bloom. So again, pretty depressing on cotton, but it is what it is. This is why we don't go whole hog in one crop, because you don't ever know what the year is going to bring, and you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Right now we got a great looking corn crop. We're about to go look at soybeans. My late planted beans look great. So not all is lost this year, but we've and I'll do a lot more in-depth on a video on cotton here in a few days, showing you exactly how a cotton plant grows, try to explain its physiology and how it actually develops. So maybe that'll give you a little bit better understanding of what I'm seeing out here in the field. And one last comment on cotton while we're driving to the soybean field. Ultimately, the last word on cotton, something I'm going to tell you out in the field. We've got about 470 acres of cotton planted this year, and that field I showed you with the skippy stand, it's definitely not the bulk of our acres. I figure about 150 acres. We've got a stand that looks like that, similar to it, maybe not quite as bad. And then the other 300 or so acres, we've got a lot better stand on. So we're not looking at that bad of a stand all across our cotton crop. Ultimately all of our cotton is going to be extremely late and probably low yielding, but 300 or so acres of that doesn't also have the blow of having a low population, which will help which will help raise yield some on those farms. So anyway, let's get to a soybean field and show you what we got there. All right, here we are out in one of our double crop soybean fields. It means it was soybeans planted behind our wheat crop. This is the first field we got back into after we got our combine repair, so it was a little bit later than our earlier wheat beans, but man, they look phenomenal. Got a picture perfect stand, which in all the thick wheat straw we had to plant through. Really surprised we got, which in all the thick wheat straw that we planted through, I'm really surprised we got this good of a stand, but the planter did a great job. Kelly did a great job of planting them, and they look really good. I believe these are 4.9 maturity beans that we've got out here. They're starting to bloom and set pods. They're actually right at the R2 stage, real close to the R3 stage. They're still growing vegetatively. These soybeans are an indeterminate variety, which means that they can grow vegetatively while being in the reproductive phase. So they will continue to get taller, especially with the heat that we've got and the soil moisture we've got. These things could get every bit of waist tall on us. Got a good chance of really loading up with pods. I am seeing just a little bit of disease starting to pop up here. See right there by my thumb, that's frog eye leaf spot. Over here, there's another little spot. So these quite aren't at the stage where I want to spray a fungicide, but with the moisture that we got and the moisture that's predicted this week, as soon as these get to the right stage, we'll definitely be coming in here with a fungicide application. But I'd say that's probably going to be about a week away before they get to where I want to be in the R3 stage. But I'm really tickled with this double crop soybean crop so far. Still got a really long ways to go. This will be the last thing that matures out and gets ready for harvest. But I'd say right now we're definitely on track for at least a 50 bushel per acre average, maybe even a 55 bushel per acre average, which is for double crop beans is really, really good. So, but Pretty much all of my wheat beans look like this. Really tickled with them. So let's go look at a full season soybean crop, see what it looks like. All right, here we are at one of our full season soybean fields, and man, early on, we had to replant a good portion of our soybean acres. Well, I didn't actually replant. We didn't have enough seeds per acre, so we came in and we split the middles. We didn't terminate what was already there. But man alive, we got these beans planted early. They actually able to start blooming before June 21st, the longest day of the year. So that means they've been able to capture maximum sunlight. And because of the cool conditions, it kind of shortened the distance in between nodes, so they're not as tall as what they normally are. Normally, by now, they're close to chest high on me. As you can see, they're a little over waist high, but that's a good thing. Plant height doesn't necessarily contribute to yield on soybeans, but with these being shorter, there's less chances of them lodging, and lodging will tend to lower yields. So a little bit more compact plant, but with the same amount of nodes, could potentially yield quite a bit more. I mean, looking down here in the canopy, I mean, they're loaded up with pods. Pods everywhere. They still got quite a bit more development to go. Most of these are 3 bean pods. I've even seen a couple of 4 bean pods. See, there's a 4 bean pod right there. I mean, loaded all the way up to the tip top. They're going to be good. They're going to be real good. Our full season soybean average for the last 5 years, I think 64 or 65 bushels per acre. As long as we don't get scorching heat in the rest of August, first part of September, I mean, these could easily be some 70 plus bushel beans. I mean, they could even potentially be 80 bushel beans. I don't know. I tried to do yield estimates on beans before, counting how many pods per plant, how many plants per acre. And we know there's between 2,500 and 4,000 seeds per pound, and try to figure that yield that way. But I've never even remotely come close to what soybeans actually yield. So all I know is these are going to be good and going to be really exciting to run a combine through them this year. And we need all the soybeans we can get, because if you watched the earlier videos, we're going to get a really low price for soybeans this year, because one of the problems with my contracts from last year wound up doubling up on me, then lost about $3 per bushel because we had to roll it forward because I couldn't fill it last year. So, we got 25,000 bushels of beans going to be sold for about a little less than $8 a bushel, whereas currently they're going for around $13 a bushel. So we need a lot of volume to make up for the low price. But if we have big yields, especially on our full season and on our double crop, we should make a lot more than 25,000 bushels. So we'll have quite a few bushels to sell at a higher price, and hopefully bring our average price up a little bit. Still not going to be what it could have been, but marketing your grain is a lot like going to Vegas. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Not seeing very much disease in here. Seeing just a little bit of frog eye start to pop up. These were sprayed with a fungicide about 3 weeks ago, right after our corn. So really help keep the disease out of here. And as far along as these beans are, a little bit of disease coming in now is really not going to affect yield that much. So before we leave the field, one other thing I was wanting to show you. One disease we are starting to see pop up, and it's just kind of scattered. It's not real bad, really not going to make any yield difference, but this is sudden death syndrome. And it basically causes the plant to die prematurely. As you can tell, we've only really got one plant affected here, and that's a disease that's in the soil, but it only infects the plant in really good soybean years. You'll never see SDS when you're having a bad growing season for soybeans. It's just something about the moisture in the soil at the right time, and then it affects the plants. So you see some SDS in your field, that's just another good indication you're going to have some good yields. As long as it's not widespread, affecting a lot of plants over the entire field, SDS isn't going to affect yields too much. Now, it can be a big yield robber. If you got a variety that's really susceptible to SDS and you got a lot of plants out here affected, it can really hurt yield. But The varieties I plant have a pretty good score against SDS, and it's something I'm not really too concerned about. In fact, I use it as an indicator that we're going to have some pretty good soybean yields this year. Anyway, I think we're getting a pretty long video. Got one more stop I want to make. I promised you a look at our replanted corn that was planted there at the very end of May, kind of see what it looks like. So let's get on over there now and we'll take a look at it. All right, here we are at my mom's house. I'll try and make this quick because my battery on my GoPro is about to run shy, but you can tell this is a lot greener. Corn is definitely not as far along. Like I said, this is planted May 31st, over a month after our earlier planted corn was. It would have been earlier than this, but we had to come back and replant, if you remember. So leaves look good, no sign of disease. Of course, we sprayed this with a fungicide about 2 weeks ago for southern rust, but still nice and green. And considering it's mid-August on May 31st planted corn on some extremely marginal hill ground, which is what this is, I'm really pleased with the way it looks. So anyway, I'll pull a few ears, do a population count, and go back to the truck and figure out what. All right, here we got our 3 ears. We counted the population of 24,000 plants per acre. We counted up. When we had to figure out we had to plant this, I said about 135 bushels an acre is about maybe all I could count on, considering how late it was and the type of ground. But 24,000 plants per acre, this was better than 135 bushels of corn. All right, we got everything counted up. Got 1638, 1640, 1639, so averaging 16 around, 39 kernels long, 624 kernels per ear times 24,000 population, almost 15 million kernels per acre, divided by 9,000. That's coming up with an average of 166 bushels per acre. And for this, I think 90,000 kernels per bushel is probably going to be more accurate. We don't have the grain depth that we had on our earlier planted stuff, just because it encountered more of heat stress in June and July, and a little bit more drought stress. It's just starting to dent, so we can't really see that milk line. But these kernels are fully formed, but they're not quite as long as what our earlier is. So I'm just going to stick with 90,000 kernels per bushel on this. I think that's realistic. They could weigh a little bit more than that, but I'd rather be conservative. So, but heck, 166 bushel an acre on May 31st, planted corn on poor ground in West Tennessee. Oh, I will take that every single year. So. But anyway, that concludes our crop tour for this year. Cotton doesn't look good. Everything else looks really good. So we had a record-setting wheat crop. We're not going to have a record-setting corn crop, I don't think, but we're going to have a really good one. Soybeans, it could be record-setting. We'll just have to wait and see, find out. So all of it's not in the bin yet. Still got a long ways to go. We'll throw that out. There's still bad things that can happen, but right now my grain crops are looking really good. And if I only have one bad crop or cotton crop, having 3 out of your 4 crops, be really good in 1 year, you can't beat that, and probably not going to go broke when you're making a profit like that. So not all is lost on the cotton crop, but it's going to need some divine intervention with some extra heat units in September and October. But anyway, I appreciate y'all watching. We'll be back again with another video soon.